그래, 녀몽 용 망고 봐. 요나 좀 보다 그러. 어제 지 추쇼선나 되다. 명들 삽자 시대에서 어제 추쇼 세쇼사 와다. 삼삼티니 뭐 노래 아니야 가요래 좀 그살.
So then, so basically, when there's clouds, you're not seeing the sun, and the clouds are like the meditative experience. And when the clouds clear, you see the sun, and the sun is like your realization. So then the next verse, it is possible to mistake a hypocrite for a noble person. And this is when here so this noble person here, it refers to like a virtuous person holding discipline, an unafflicted person, for example, like a monk keeping the discipline. And so then there's a danger of mistaking like being a hypocrite for being a noble person. And so where is it? Let's go. And so, of course, it's possible that maybe it's basically being like a pretender of having some kind of discipline, but that is not very reliable. Of course, if somebody's very careful about one's conduct, then maybe one will form a habit over time. But so generally, that is not very that is not reliable. So there's a danger of mistaking being a hypocrite for a noble person.
근데 다 진짜 저는 투게 당도 전에 사요. 나 주가 세선나 틀리는 주가 정말 세송네. 지바 참지 차တယ်. 어들라 단 주가 세 슬랍셔서래. 어떤 주가 세들의 배차 지수만 한다고 나 주가 세도 이러. 어떤 주가 세들이 다 남자티 싫어 많죠. 어디는 지바 요노라 지바 요리 제 레도요 마다 레도 제 가서나 그 두고 요마다 미나 세파시라 요 말와. 어쨌든 투게 있어서 두切身啊，这里呢，在前几天在说啊，在两种面呢，有动作性呢，多方面呢有动作性，啊，可以参与就是嘛那种前几天在在启动我可以，我参与在启用呢，都是哪有么这把可以嘛错呢？真的，他是对切是了，就是这对切是天气不好，是不是嘛？就弄着那个靠有那种可是的。
And so then next is it is possible to mistake one distracted by Mara for someone whose delusion has been destroyed. So it kind of literally says it's like there's a risk of confusing, like destroying confusion by and being carried away by Maras. And so destroying confusion means that a confusions have collapsed from within. So there's no confusion in the mind. And for example, somebody like Milarepa, and there's no grasping. So being free from delusion means being free from all grasping. Like Milarepa, for example, Milarepa, he didn't have much clothing to wear. And he didn't have a need for anything because he had no grasping in his mind. So therefore, for him, being like modest like that and having no clothing didn't harm him in any way, didn't affect him in any way. So that is someone who has destroyed confusion. But then being carried away by demons is that when one may have sort of a fleeting experience, but then one mistakes that for realization. It's like a pretense of a realization. For example, some people, they say that I want to be like I'm like Milarepa, I'm practicing like Milarepa, but then inside the afflictions and the grasping still remains. And so they have been carried away by demons, by the Maras. And so if one is not careful, then there's a danger to mix those up.
今天听就在那直播上说话那啥有些那么多，那直播现在下载全部那种去。那就那就人就得了，那就谁给我这了，你们俩现在出发头得了，是了，出不谁给我？ 我这出不这个的，但俺这出错买哪可以出错不来做这，俺说不送下这个是吧？我这
Mhm.
是真正广播有人要做伙伴的，就做那个那个满足，原来他经常没些，你们护士广播有在拍出多运动多，许多年真正忙不多。我们就可以在出头被做河南运动多许多年，真正忙不多。有的真正有的在我那些叫做什么那种多，我们写嘛，咱们那些大家去看马拉松，大家有的些。大家这帮子节拉出个马拉是在云南，真的，现在不现呢，瞧在什么那种多才的，在那出吧出吧去，但说不现在在没人过过中间是，原来多少人没人过过在，大马桶看通，这马桶这通，这没这通，10年这有了吧？这是说不的，马桶那通是的，这没经常没忙不在这个我修，我他通这通在那就别个我拍可得这通嘛这，我现在这需要几点点，但我是一拿桥没拿桥真的。甚至在一小队没种，这别个我多，我在甚至在期望呢，在说话是那个意思啊，听你们差不多，他可以是那个，他可别我些小见多，他别出差不多做那些的话，在我些有那桥没那桥呢，他甚至在，我甚至讲现在，好，我那这有的出差不多行，那这个，那我些有弄多去嘛了吧，我别想一大个。我甚至了的，我这那张听你不，那啥有我是那学出来。
Then the next verse, it is possible to mistake a charlatan for a siddha. So a siddha is someone who has attained a realization in Mahamudra, someone who has practiced and has realized the stages of the path of Mahamudra. There's some who are actual siddhas, have accomplished masters, and then there's others who claim to be siddhas. That's that they're those charlatans. So they claim to possess certain realizations of Mahamudra when they don't, and that's something that was quite prevalent in the old days in Tibet. There were quite a lot of people who would pretend, who would say they have all kinds of powers and they see gods and demons and spirits and so on. Maybe nowadays it's not so much anymore, but definitely in the old days. And people also were quite fascinated by that, and they like to talk about, oh, this person can see a ghost or a demon or a god, and he has clairvoyant powers and so on. And so then they would pretend, even if they don't actually have that, they would claim those powers, but they actually have little practice themselves and no true realization of Mahamudra. Of course, they may have some practice, so one cannot say 100% that they have no practice, but so there's a lot of pretense around that topic. And so whether it's true or not, a real siddha actually wouldn't even claim that they have any clairvoyant powers, any abilities. So that is what we call no, a siddha or a charlatan.
我在出来当时，西高国的说不不么子，我出来当时，就让回家先读也是老师，他回家是立马来学了，
So,
是回家的话，他回家人去做立马来学了，立马可能用就让写习读也是老师嘛，
oh,
但我也有也来学，多边呢，
mm,
忙我把写习读也是，回家是忙我
mm,
把来学了啊，
mm,
然后写蛮多人呢，有的
mm,
我们老师，我那么先把忙不在，回家写个的是，那这个人呢，我这也我这是吧？
um, so once remember there was this a disciple, a student, Mongolian woman from Chicago, and she once asked me a question, and she said that, so do you have some clairvoyance? Essentially, said, do you know the future? Can you tell me what happens in the future? What will happen? And so I basically said that I don't know. And then she said, well, many other lamas know. And then I said that that's good for them.
那这其实现在现动它让东西把那啥有，现在它这里它这让现动起啊，它这让起到什么嘛？从现在凭什么做什么当的？它现动是个吧？我这现动是个让动现在它在爬打出去呢，在现动一边全去。 다 통다 강나 장나 캡상 디 신도냐 저 랑동 세계 다 랑동 저下的节有了我这랑동 세계我这绿他听你不啊诺亚人看有嘞种可大那我东西
So, da podemos llevar.
那我们中多他中多他我东西
Then, and the next verse says, it is possible to mistake self-serving activity for altruism. So altruism is when one actually thinks about benefiting others. So one actually does not think much about oneself, and one mostly just thinks about others. That is altruism. But the self-serving activity. Self-serving is when, or a self-serving activity for altruism is that when we we pretend, we put up a show of altruism, so it looks like we are doing great things for others, but then our true motive inside is somewhat self-serving. Even though outwardly it looks like altruism, inwardly it's really self-serving, and it really for one's own benefit. And so Gampopa warned that there is a danger of mixing those up.
我真的但是北腔那个现在不清楚，下那个嘛普地地的，最空松多，他你看那入签的，入签出口的是，你看入签提别口要搞我是，你看入签提错，但是湖南的咱们那里，让我们的在西来，让我们全国那么的呀，麻木等于都不知道，但这样子没这个票罗在这拍，在气候中多，你做拍些口要用么多中多，我咋听着那么个来讲，上面没吃了哇。别行动了，没这种别改给的，我们那么这么那里让我的起来了，就那么偏别这想对我的用个嘞。
Yeah. So, for example, Gachin Rinpoche, and when back he told a story back when he was in Tibet in the old days, he would hold disruptions, his retreats, his practices constantly all day long because Rinpoche really likes these practices. And so in Tibet also there's a tradition that when somebody is sick or dying, for example, there's a tradition of inviting a lama. So during the daytime he would practice in these retreats, and then at nighttime he would go to those places where people were sick or dying, and he wouldn't sleep at all essentially. So he made this incredible effort, and that is truly acting for the benefit of others, altruistic activity, because he knew that the Tibetans, the people there, they loved him as a lama, and then if they see the lama when they're very sick or dying, then it makes them feel a bit better, and he wanted that, and that's why he always went.
真的，他们开发的有就了，那啥有啥哈？他们开发的有些，咱人民求，人民那啥求决策，他这里啥了说啥了吧？可现在他们开发期待的，真的有，他们开发有，是什么样的偏拖呀？就是他们开发期待的。这他们开发期那个，我那先偏什么都有吧？他们那个起来之后，那我就什么样的偏他们开发期图片。甚至有的，可惜在他们给我用多钱呢？在现在我有去在做才让动了下的，甚至用这个的，啥子你不能啥甚至去过是啥的吧？对吧？有去现在大个他们给运动多，两年运动多，其他是他有去这个了吧
？The next verse, it is possible to mistake deceit for skillful means. So there is those who are truly skillful in means, and they actually bring a benefit, genuine benefit to sentient beings. That is real altruistic activity, activity of skillful means. And then there's others who pretend to be skillful in means when they're actually deceiving others. So it's possible to mistake deceit for skillful means. So it looks like they're benefiting others, but their intention is not altruism, but a self-benefit. Outwardly, it appears like skillful means, but inwardly, it is actually deception. So there is a danger of confusing them. So there's, for example, a danger of someone pretending to have certain experiences when they don't. That's deception.
다 만월배 추주들이 만월배 추주여서 다 공포 강라 마차바 챔미바 라던 좀 만월반이 있어. 공포 강라 마차 대창다 상제 좀 되는데 잖아. jersey 종야 다 마모지 여러 가지 참마고 버티 참마파 요 jersey 장야 지 참마요 제 챔미바 라도 총.我在 rap 的穷啊，他妈老板，是上级军队的，这种多，当火了就这长没穷，是的，当火了就是这种嘛，长没个鸡巴浪松是，或者空没种穷吧，他那种是的，但那种那不是那把他那种的，种我他他这种就是，我听人就在这这蛮多把的，实际上咱当然是东北学校嘛，不给出那东北我的概念，东北有的，他他那种。那边是自己是大的有人，要么其他还是呢？但也没忙不是啊，什么当工了吧？啊，给先把人啊那么的在什么的上回来了，啊，在你们其他地方推出的是，对过来这的是有的话，他这边那在他是说他妈的嘛，他本家他都有就是蛮这个，啊，先把这那么先把其他什么当工了，我之前对自己说起来，然后他第一大的是吧？
And then next are the 10 things that are unmistaken. And the first one is it is unmistaken to become part of a monastery with renunciation and without any attachment whatsoever. For example, the Buddha Shakyamuni himself, he was born a prince destined to uphold the kingdom, to rule over the kingdom, but he gave it all up. He gave up the kingdom and the royal life, and he became a renunciate. He became a monk. And the Buddha said for many countless lives that have been wheel turning. There are many wheel turning kings. I've been wheel turning kings, but now I have come forth as a monk. And he took those vows of renunciation. And there are many different vows for the ordained and also for the lay people. But in essence, if one renounces, like if one becomes ordained, it just makes practice easier because for householders, a lot of time is taken up by the family and different responsibilities, which leaves very little time for practice. But then for those who have taken a monastic ordination, maybe they still have some relatives, their parents, and so on. But beyond that, they have very few entanglements in life, and that simplifies practice.
真的，咱挺久起来，咱那么给为一年过了，头先考的话，那蛮多吧，是我的做，知道咱那么先做的，做这位那么的，这里他在穷的特别那么长嘛，他在考虑呢，苦试过的也是，我在这给为那么他给为一年沉迷点嘛，我在沉嘛这吧点，真的头先考生我刚考的，那苦试过的那可能我刚考着都我嘛话生，那苦试考虑呢，这就试过的也是，我真的재미 다 저거를 공부 쇼사를 나마 제가做你的别且下头那有啊那么你看公司这里插话也发了公过来去别电影是啥东西真巴了妈的你计划了公司计划了我公他我真的啥东西真巴了公司确别那意思我在你别的但你看了公呀这最近那我写信都要这是偏有啥吧我拿他这里去过去的咱今天说我那么长时间上街是这就多呗，那就了3多，我这就多村民没钱居民是吧？这马托瓦是在那么可就呢，他在这2年去没回去，他就讲呢，这那么的长时间上街也没把多少呢的，但没事就没回去去了就没了是的，所以我在那里说到处要咱别从几个学车的是。
The second is it is unmistaken to respect an authentic guru by elevating him to the crown of your head. And so the authentic guru, our main guru is our root guru. And then there's all the other gurus, the other spiritual masters, spiritual friends. We must respect them all. And eventually by paying them respect and venerating them, then eventually our minds will become inseparable. We never separate from them. So it is taught that when you're like staying when you're like lying or like still, then you can visualize the guru at the heart, and that helps to develop a realization of luminosity. When you're eating or drinking, you visualize the guru at the throat, then it becomes an offering. And when you're walking around, you visualize the guru behind your right shoulder, and then walking around becomes a circumambulation. At any other time when you just simply stay somewhere, you visualize the guru at the crown. So when you go to sleep, you lie down at the heart, and when you stay at the crown. So then you're always with the guru. And Jigden Sumgön had said that I'm a yogin who has realized that my own mind, the Guru's mind, and the Buddha's mind are one, and that is the ultimate devotion or effortless devotion of non-duality. So once you have become inseparable from the guru, there is no special effort needed. You're naturally one with the guru. But until then, we must make an effort in not devotion and cultivating respect for the guru until that realization arises.
말라게 송我您前推着他们进圣诞节上车嘛用是，那您前推着他们进圣诞节圣诞马巴里圣诞节车嘛用是的，我从多我在城里你们来撒气说啥的是，我真的他除了托上公司充满了气吧呢，马诺巴意思，我他除了托上公司是除了他那除了그래, 다 얘기한다. 너. 이제 너왜 전화 통도 왜 다 얘기한다. 너왜.
이게 가능할까?
현실의 미지. 코리아 스라 추면.
나 이게 무슨
나 이게 제 나서 쇼서 찍는다.
응, 응.
야, 근데 다 가다티 我咱去了土生沟通是吧？我出马去吧，那不马诺吧？出马山咱娘们去呀，是做修啥？但一当时去开始土巴去过去，那马诺的去过去。啊，土巴去过这历史讲了，就不讲说人家出去个嘛，这三八去过的是。这三八去呢，这里我们家过去，做不成啊，说去土巴三八去下子，做不成说我们家呢，说就当局都下子了吧？我这人都听你不娘去过的是，但好像看这应该说成老样子了。他老穷的土巴去，给的娘们去现在老样了，他这有用嘛的他。做我这对老可穷的土巴去三八去光巴去这种娘们老头呢。这也有的是我这种嘛弄的，我听着的是嘛，但这人生但这老有人不在老不中去下去，理解了这，这我们的小孩子呢，这样这说旅游的，他说刚刚用的，我别强调想，但这别强调讲理解了，냠네 시 zamno da de nyam tika so nyam ga cha thona te manor ba re son khasare
Milarepa had said that throughout the 6 times of day and night, I have never separated from my Guru Marpa. So ideally, that is how we need to practice. And then the next verse, it is unmistaken to train yourself in the threefold combination of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. So we need to hear, that is, we need to hear the teachings, but it's not enough to just study or learn something. If we don't reflect on that, it will not stay in our mind. And of those three, the main point is actually meditation, or it is to practice. So we have to learn it and then reflect it, understand it, and then actually practice it, apply it to the mind directly, integrate it into our mind. And that is is meditation. Because some say that, so when you're young, you're spending your time studying, you're learning a lot, and then later when you get older, then you're just going to meditate. But in truth, you shouldn't wait until you're old. So you should already practice when you're young. Of course, you have to learn, but it can go hand in hand. So you can practice all three when you're young: the hearing, contemplation, and the meditation together, not just one of them. So don't spend many years of studying and thinking that you're going to put that all into practice when you're older, because when you're older, then maybe your body is not functioning that well anymore, not so easy to meditate any longer. So study the text, but then right away put them into practice. So that is the unmistaken way to practice.
真的别讲的像他那个推说的穷的，那我的别讲的讲有呢，人工怎么的上，在其实我们的家，那在冲啊什么弄了，在天上了吧？
So, for example, how you could do it is you have the time, you can spend some time studying in the morning, and then during the day you reflect, and then in the evening you meditate, you practice it.
真的打完图了，就把嘛完的嘛弄了吧，是吧？他在打完图，就把嘛现在打完图不，我们用过去了。这上次就在那个让先推用是推中多，先算推过去了，先推下子了，等俺家子在，然后打完图不，那俺家亲人这去嘛了吧？我这女真的就把嘛现在在咱用穷学在你们在这头讲家呢，在但是。甚至去过去面在康州嘛就亲人这口嘛，但俺打完图不一，还是看着我亲他们的中多吧，甚至亲人这口嘛的也是。你嘛在咱们就见多，咋不去在，但可能嘛实际再去看这个吧，我再去看这再去看这个吧，可能再去看这个吧。这里对，真的可能在老忙着忙忙的说了，这去年其实也看了车或者说那可能去到这的考车啥的，这里到这家到这他这没得要嘛是吧？第三年前让我他第到这考试看了也车啥的，可能结果。Ja, tässä on rosan sari. Tässä on rosan työ chuo sari. Se chuo on te goma te gemo je na ne san de yo sa gemo je yo sa ro. Te gemo je yo sa de ja ma de nyam chung so sa de te ja gemo ti. Te pan na hyo ge de te gemo de ja cha le shong na je yo na. Ta za yo kon de shen de gemo ti. Yo sa de gemo de cham no yo sa ra cham no sa jin ba dang sa je yo ro. Jin ba dang sa.
Oh.
金巴当时，那去南天做经济种了，多在金巴路当都是嘞，这可能上手那我做过那他是家那我可以说很多个嘛，或那批长毛了，去乱做嘛过，现去乱做嘛过，我这给么子有啥？这金巴这签诺了，给他签诺，俺说朋友那签诺先金巴可个了吧，先去了可个了吧，这路线弄着我，然后现着了吧，我当时可个了，这小给给么子，咱那嘛破事要的了。
Szabad umorni, kajczyzna?
Gemotita c'erano ma poco, se sai che mo di maiora. Ce l'ho là.
Kerangi ma por
Azaba c'è una
Oh.
Morangi ma jimba, sa c'è ma poco, se io non mi c'è un po'. Ma te c'hanno un po' da roba. E ja, zaba c'è che ja, ma chi ce l'ho un rosso sarote. Quindi c'è va che si leva, sa che. Zaba c'è un po' sono che ci va sa che mo to ma sono zero sare. 자, 나는 들어왔는 공원도냐는데 맨날 통화송해야 돼. 난 통화송해. 되게 뭔가 뺏어. 아, 뭐 소리
Konso moran
사시요?
gecha dire. Konso moran ngite tongsong es dire.
뭐 다시 통화송해 되게 뭐 계셔 치워서. 뭐 담보 잡아 좀 통화송해서 치워. 통화 송해요, 사례.
Oh.
그래도 나는 맨날 들어와 공원에 통화송해. 통화송 땅가 나 오나 되세요, 사례. 되게 뭐 소리. 나 김바 포함한 거라고. 어떤 데는 이제 다 뭐님 중도 다 냠내 가라고 하고 말 왕알아서 어제 지금 말에 답보는 뭐 따바 남가 라고 총나 저바 그게 치고레스 왕 그런 것이 성어로 따바 남가 좀 저바 확실히 세스 저바의 준비 확실히 차시 전화 지고레스 어떤 생각 치고레 정말
Nilare pa maraba.
말라레 답보는 뭐 제가 생각 정도다 지나 저 따바 통보 저바 삼반
Guru
뭐
po changsa.
그런 뭐지 저게 롱배 향도다 지금 나는 생산자마다
So then the next verse, it is unmistaken to keep a high view while maintaining modest conduct. So it is good to stay humble at all times. It is said that the Buddha himself had said that tame your own mind, completely tame your own mind. And if we that here it says this let's say high view. So high view, it refers to being very prideful. So if you're very prideful, if you have this high view, then it's hard to tame your own mind. So practice really requires some humility. For example, if you think that or tell people I'm Haruka and I'm this and that, then it's not very good for the practice. There was this story about Tsar Patu Rinpoche. So he was in on Sachuka, and he was going to travel to Lhasa for a pilgrimage. And so when he was still in Sachuka, he was there with many of his students. And so wanted to go on a pilgrimage, but he went ahead. So he took off on his own first on the way to Lhasa. So he was traveling. So they actually were gonna go together, but then he snuck away alone. So he kind of secretly left. So because he wanted to go alone, so he traveled without any attendants, and just went alone toward Lhasa. And on the way, one night he stayed with an old woman, and the woman thought, "Oh, this is a very humble person." He came across very humble, and so she gave him some tea. And so basically, because he was so humble, she decided that he's going to serve her. She's going to just order him around a little bit because he was convenient. And so in Tibet, they have no toilets in the old days, especially. So, and also because it's very cold in Tibet. So what they have is they have this. Yeah, so it's mainly something for older people. So in Tibet, they have this bowl, like a metal bowl that they pee inside basically at night, and then in the morning they bring it out. So the old people don't have to go out in the cold winter. So it's very common for them to have this pee bowl. So she had her pee bowl inside, and so then she told him in the morning. She told him, "So can you please bring my pee bowl out and pour it out somewhere?" And so he was so humble that he just took it and he carried it out. And so while he was out, then some of the monks had arrived, and then they asked her if they had seen Patu Rinpoche. And then they described him, like what he's wearing and so on. And then she realized who he actually was, and she was extremely embarrassed. But this is how a truly humble person is. A truly humble person is actually not recognized as a practitioner by others. It's you don't recognize them that they are practitioners. And so Milarepa also told Agam Bobam that your view has to be as vast as the sky. And also Guru Rinpoche said that, and your conduct has to be as fine as flour, as Tsampa flour, meaning that you have to be very careful, very precise when it comes to your conduct.
저는 달러 양라 담자 토바는 만나러 봐주스. 제 로호 대시 양보는 원나 야보를 신념내 치도 시초야 돼. 그래서 베이스 펜토 해서래. 담자도 토하고서 담자도 양보 진득셔서 막 담자서는 다지 돈바 담체 있어서 디스 토하고 그래서. 어,
Mm,
와 저서 토보 맞이나 담체 돈바체 슐링에 가버려서 토보치 그래서. 로테 양 그래서. 좋아.
mm,
我这他们家这北桥的所说讲些长了所去东北我这做讲这三徒步在那他谈别给钱了吧 谈不了去过来是们在娘娘去啊这说原来在路后阳波的啊成都有那要给的总去啥的他
mm,
我这几开始那这次路阳成都有那几天在推拿这做啊这偏学啥了在没了的都有了
mm,
我这是我的那他听到东巴这种谈不说不清楚这个嘛的是他老是他们家做是呢
mm. And then the next verse. Mm. It is unmistaken to be carefree while at the same time keeping a strict resolve. So and it is good to have an open mind, be open to anything in the mind. That's very good for one's practice, but one shouldn't be very open, sort of loose or carefree with one's vows. So the vows should not be held lightly, but they actually must be held strictly. So the mind should be kind of loose and open, but if the vows are if you if you also apply that to your vows, you're eventually going to lose your vows. And so, whatever vow it is, whether it is the individual liberation, bodhisattva, Vajrayana vows, one must keep them strictly. One must have a firm commitment in those vows. So, the reason why one should be carefree and open-minded is also because one needs to be willing to have some openness and kind of so one doesn't cut off the connection with worldly people. I mean, one must live in this world and also get along with others. So one must have an open mind, but it's not okay to let one's commitment slip.
전에 다들 그 정도 당화 말해서 카르셋 시럽치랑 아자총 만화가니스 또 시럽치 보면 야고래 시럽치는 약을 와주 조그네로 되 시계를 냠내치나 야보시에 소그래 뭐 냠내서 치소그래 시럽치 안데 아자치는 당아 시럽치 보제요 당나라는 제 15인 삼천 아자치디나데 안데 냠내서 양사반 로그 말레스 시럽 개치 모르데 안데 아자사 안데 나라 카시트를 용도 왕랑소 당가 제 믹스 리퀘어스 소야 보시오 제 메신발 타처럼 제 요마를 섬나데 들이 삼삼 소소소 아자시 아마 뭐 용도 같은 거 여러 와 와선주 지나 야고요 말레스 노드나
And then the next verse. It is unmistaken to have much knowledge while remaining humble. So it is. This knowledge is about one's kind of wisdom, one's intelligence. But of course, we want to have wisdom. We want to have like discriminating wisdom, but without any pride involved. So we want to have wisdom, but stay humble with it. Because no, otherwise, if no, no, some people like that no, they have a lot of intelligence. They're very intelligent, but then they are also prideful. They think that I have a lot of wisdom. I'm very intelligent, and nobody. I just see through it, and I know it, and others just don't. So if you have this attitude, then you will never actually truly practice. So while like, intelligence is, of course, important, we need that in order to understand the teachings and understand our practice well. It shouldn't become mixed with pride or with arrogance. And there are a lot of people like that, especially nowadays, practitioners who boast that I'm so intelligent, I see through it when others don't. And there are many people like that, but that's really not very good for one's practice.
전에 다 담가 주라 냠내 좀바는 만노르바니스 왔다 담가 앞에만 보때 남의 담가 사모 담가선 사보 들어와 사바서 축본다고 해서 어제 냠내 치고 그래서 냠내 좀주 지나 다들 남한테 만노르바레스 야 담가 야고 요디들 냠내 시라미나 전에 앞에 소시라요 말에 그 담가 팽그 말아 냠내 좀주 맞이나 어젠디 들으리 좀주 치보고 담가 시라미나 안테 야보용마다 디니기 들었다 고야서 개침보레스 전에 어디서 개침보 살아왔어
And then next, it is unmistaken to be rich in oral instructions while striving in practice. So the oral instructions, it refers to the profound instructions, the practical instructions that we receive. And these are important and we have to practice them. So if you just have the instructions, but you lack the diligence and you don't actually practice them, then those profound instructions bring you very little benefit. And also, if you are very diligent, but you don't have the instructions, then it doesn't help you much. So you need them both. You need to have an abundance of instructions and a steady practice of these instructions.
전에 배짱도 시원하다 말라레스 종요로 뭐 말라레스 종요로 몇 똑바라 생 고와자 말고 그냥 사고 자고 그렇다 몇 똑바제를 이제 상황제 요르세티 메인 고와자 팽그 말레스 저 사고레스 어떤 나지래 전에 배짱도 다 내바시나 매바제 김면도 맨 김민도서 로로로로 되게 배운 말로 맨 사고로 와. 어떤 나지다 맨 사는 이 차가로 어떤 나지다 담화제 야보요 그래서 코디 냠란데 라메 군디 담화 뭐 쉬고 저 코드나 또 냠란 좀 주민나 되게 배운 말에 좀 표사래
Milarepa had said that a sick person should eat food. And so there's no benefit in just like talking about food and listing and all the different kinds of food and hearing about the different names and different kinds of food. And there's no benefit in that. You have to actually eat the food, not just know about the food. So a hungry person only eating removes the hunger. Or for a sick person, a sick person actually needs to eat the medicine. When a sick person just reads many medicinal texts, reads a lot about medicine, that alone will not help them at all. They also have to actually take the medicine and then they will heal. And so, in the same way, one may have received many great, profound instructions from many different lamas, but without diligence in practice, all of these instructions are of no benefit.
전에 다 냠토 상나 가자 메바는 마노르바이 세다 냠 도파 냠나치 제 도파 상보면 내가 가자 메바 그게 가자다 용게다 가 도파 좀 동보인 섬리 섬노다 가자 뭐 용표사리 전에 마종 같아 그거에 세다 냠토 가자 상보요 야고 요나 데 가자 데 총 조쇼사리 가서는 그 냠 상보지 요라다 데 싫어 미나 이잠 용거로 배장 지심을 바다 게마다 냠나치 되게 레총 제가 손을 레총 제가 손이 제 로병도 있으니까 소리도 나자도 있어 고 레총 나자 맞아 지지 좀 이렇게 라마다 쳤다 라데 라마다 뭐 보시고 정도 봐 레총 코다지 이제 당하다 배차도 스말라레 파스 그 전에나 야보치지 참 한번 다그 코파 차전 세진 말라레 배초 나 차세지 다 나자 가스 담아만 뭐 톱자 어떻게 그 나자도 말라레 파 차만 세디 코 디스카마노 그래 말라레 섭단 통도 다 신베 남아제이나 나자 가스도 트레네나 야보치 배 메시 야보치 그래 나랑 남았다 하지 코나 그거서 공주면 답이 오늘 그래서 거다 말라레 반 통총치원 어떻게 치노 어차서는 상가자라 그러 어째 진짜 냠나 양사반 로그 말어 전투리데 지지 말아는 나자 요 말데 내 좀 방가자세 아치트면 믹싱 가자도 요 말어
And the next verse is it is unmistaken to have it is unmistaken to have excellent experience and realization while being free from conceit and vanity. So we need to have realization, but we shouldn't have a pride in our realization. And some people, once they have realized just a little bit, they're very, very proud about that. And they say that I have really realized it, and they make sure that people also know about that. Actually, when true realization and an experience arise, then pride actually diminishes. But without much practice, if we don't not people who have some practice but not so much practice, that it may seem to them that they have great realization, but it's not actual realization. For example, in the past, when Milarepa was with Rejungpa, there was a time when Rejungpa traveled to India to study, and Milarepa stayed back to practice. And then when Rejungpa returned, he came with some pride, and so at that time Milarepa showed various like signs or kind of miracles to cut down his pride. And so anyways, Rejungpa thought that when I come back, surely Milarepa will bow down to me and will welcome me respectfully, because I went all the way to India to study. But then when he actually came, Milarepa didn't do any of that. And Rejungpa was quite displeased about that. And he compared Milarepa to other lamas, and he thought that to himself that, well, if it's anybody, it would be anybody else. If I went to India and to study and come and return, then they would welcome me back with much honor. But he didn't do any of that. So his pride was a little bit hurt by that. So he Now he actually, in his mind, he belittled Milarepa somewhat for missing to do that, and of course, Milarepa knew that, and Milarepa had no pride. He acted actually very deliberately. It was in order to cut Rejungpa's pride, because when there is pride, it is really a sign of not having true practice.
근데 다다 너 지그 지보도 소란 소소 연토바 나만노바 인스 다르 좀더 지보리나 도 톱데 저 냠나치도 저랑 지고 카시디나 도 톱냐 전주요래 대만만 보초스 도고나 도 톱냐 카히만만 보초 도 톱나 저디나 전주 유수사래在加西摩托在天主动嘛，他天主有啥的，大家住都被搞死，要么这住地板那的，马木那地呢，要么提没吧，做会那地那的，就说那地呢，要么被往土买说吧，这让这人来起图呀，我这咱咱让几个地那都特别，先对的先人地那都特别好的，真凶那的蛮多把的是，
And then the next verse is, it is unmistaken to be able to live in solitude while also being able to be with others. So it is good to stay in mountain retreats for as long as you may, as you can, much as possible. But then one should also be able to stay among people. Because there are some people who just prefer to stay in solitude, prefer being alone, and they prefer not to be with others. They just want to be alone, and they kind of bothers them when they're around other people. But truly, I'm practicing means that no matter where you are able to remain free of afflictions, whether it is alone in a mountain retreat, you can stay there for however long, or it is among people, no afflictions arise. And so whether alone or in groups, you're able to remain stable and self-sufficient without falling under the power of the afflictions. That is unmistaken. Mhm.
听就听着话的。听就这让东米吧，那先东他们去吧，那蛮多把因是，我在让东吃吧，是哪让东的吃吧给吃的，我这吃吧没吃吧去，这现在偏样，这样可以听着用了，这让现在偏头的去那让每年的就这样的我这说，我听着用了，听着没记得，这现在偏头，到现在大过了，现在偏出样子了，这让才蛮多把因种出啥的呢？这咱蛮多被出去的是的。
Then the last one, it is unmistaken to be unbound by selfishness while being skillful in helping others. So benefiting others must be unconnected, not connected with self-interest. Now, some people, they help others, but also sometimes in order to gain some advantage out of it for themselves. So not totally like selfless. And so that is mistaken. When accomplishing the benefit of others, if one also on the side seeks some of one's own benefit, then that is mistaken. So to not seek one's own benefit, that is unmistaken. So these are the 10 things that are unmistaken.
他是真的，他是凌晨上起床的，这是社会节嘛，第九的嘛，现在他这第九的同没被求救被写在领导啊。
We stop here for today and we continue next Friday. We continue with the is it 14? The 14 things. The 14 things that are meaningless. Mhm.
真的他是写起还也不，今天总共的这里给些也没得是英语，OK。
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind, rooted lineage lamas, divine assembly of idams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, heroes and heroines, yogini and assembly of dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please heed me. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all sentient beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise within my mind. May thoughts of fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. Even at death, may the torment of suffering not arise. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervasive clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Ina siya lang besa dili masundang la imagine tali.
Taron lam natain ba? Taron lam
Vi med tombali do la imagine siya lang
Oh,
ni ya
oh
sa.
my God. Nga tandarang tanging, nga tanang lola lab, tari nga. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, tene yeah, sama yeah, okay, everybody, thank you. Good night.
Thank
Maybe
you.
see you next week.
Good night. Next week.
Good
Yeah,
night.
okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.